Shocking revelation, why Romans 8 will haunt you forever. This truth changes everything. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, a secret had been buried for decades, a chilling mystery that began the day the storm blew through, twisting the trees like tortured souls. On that night, the sky erupted with electric blue flashes, illuminating an ancient stone chapel that had long been forgotten. The wild winds howled, echoing the cry of something unseen, something lurking just beyond the edge of comprehension. What was it that had awakened? As the clock struck midnight, a figure cloaked in darkness emerged from the shadows, making its way towards the chapel's crumbling doors. Legends whispered of the words written in Romans 8, and how they had the power to either liberate or haunt those who understood them. For generations, the townsfolk had avoided discussing it, as if speaking the verses out loud would unleash an unspeakable terror upon them. There were tales, fragments of old memories that told of a woman who dared to read them aloud during the storm. They said her eyes rolled back as if she was channeling something cosmic, and her scream pierced the night, echoing into the eternity of darkened woods. She was never seen again. As whispers of Romans 8 danced like fireflies through the community, a palpable tension tightened around the townspeople's hearts. They could feel it. Something dark was stirring in the depths of their past, waiting for the right moment to burst forth. The air felt electric, charged with dread and anticipation, as if the universe was about to reveal a truth too horrific to comprehend. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But as storm clouds loomed ominously above, their fear morphed into raw urgency. Every rustle of leaves, every distant clap of thunder felt like ominous warning bells tolling in their minds. A local girl, Sarah, her pulse quickening with anxiety, dared to step toward the chapel, her heart hammering in her chest. What revelation awaited inside those cursed walls? Was it the haunting truth of Romans 8? Or something even more sinister? With a trembling hand, she pushed the door open, a cry escaping her lips as ancient dust motes swirled around her like spirits dancing in the gloom. The door creaked, sounding like a desperate plea from the shadows. She felt it then, eyes watching, waiting, hungry. What would she find in the depths of the chapel? Would she uncover the truth about Romans 8 that could shake their existence to its core? Or would she fall victim to the very darkness they all feared? The questions clawed at her, the answers just out of reach, tantalizingly close yet terrifyingly elusive. The air inside the chapel hung thick, suffocating. Shadows danced wickedly along the stone walls, twisting into grotesque forms that felt like remnants of long-forgotten souls. Sarah hesitated, her breaths shallow and rapid. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, a reminder of the urgency pushing her to uncover whatever lay lurking within. The flickering light from outside cast macabre images onto the altar, where dust-coated books sat in disarray, each one silently screaming for attention. Were these the texts that had driven people mad? Had she come to the very heart of the darkness that haunted Willow Creek? With a shudder, she stepped further in, the floorboards groaning as if protesting her intrusion. She had never felt fear like this, so visceral it pricked at her skin. Soft whispers tickled her ears, words she could almost catch but never fully grasp. The pulsing energy in the air grew stronger, pulling her toward the altar with an irresistible force. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning illuminated the chapel, and for a split second, Sarah saw it, a figure cloaked in shadow perched atop the altar. Her breath caught, and she froze. It was as if time had suspended her in that moment, caught between the drive to flee and the morbid curiosity that held her in place. The figure shifted, a slow, deliberate movement, and instinct kicked in. She needed to retreat, to flee this malevolent presence, but her legs felt leaden. In that instant, the air crackled with the electric thrill of revelation and despair, an invitation and a warning all at once. "Sarah," the figure croaked, the voice raspy and strangely familiar. It was a tone that resonated with both darkness and undeniable truth. You have come seeking answers, but the truth demands a price. A looming panic surged within her. The tales her grandmother told echoed in her mind. Knowledge could lead to salvation or ruin. But she had come too far to turn back now. What do you want from me? She called out, her voice wavering but defiant. With a flick of its wrist, the figure pulled a book from the shadows, the cover embossed with symbols she recognized, ancient, arcane, from the very legends the townsfolk had all but forgotten. Romans 8, it hissed. To read it is to invite the unfathomable. As the figure opened the book, a gust of wind howled through the chapel, rattling the windows. The air shimmered, vibrating with a furious intensity. Dare you not just read it, but understand it, embrace the truth within? An intense chill ran down Sarah's spine. The legends loomed larger than life now, the whispers transformed into an urgent roar, warning her of the path she teetered upon. What awaited her in those sacred lines? Was it the liberation the old stories spoke of, or a descent into madness? Clenching her fists, she stepped forward, ready to confront this unfathomable truth. Just as her fingers brushed the pages of the worn book, the world around her seemed to fracture. The shadows lunged, wrapping around her like chains forged from fear itself. The chapel, once a bastion of secrets, began to dissolve into chaos. The walls trembled, and the darkness pressed in, suffocating her. Something had awakened, and it was hungry for more than just knowledge. As the reality twisted, Sarah gasped for air, realizing she was no longer merely an observer. She was now entwined in a battle against the very essence of fear, the climax of the horror about to be unleashed upon Willow Creek. And in her heart, a single thought blazed through her mind: what have I done? The question echoed in the chapel as the tempest gathered around her, leaving only one chilling revelation: what if the darkness was not just in the chapel but had always dwelled within her? As it threatened to swallow her whole, the truth remained just out of reach, waiting to be revealed. The shadows tightened their grip around Sarah, pulling her deeper into the heart of the storm. She could feel the weight of the ancient book pressing against her fingertips, as if it craved her essence. The whispers intensified, scratching at her mind like tiny claws, threatening to unravel her sanity. Panic surged, but in that swirl of chaos, a strange clarity emerged. Embrace it, the figure rasped again, its voice winding around her like smoke. The room spun, fracturing into shards of memory and dread. Sarah's resolve faltered. What would happen if she surrendered to it? What would she lose, if anything at all? Whatever you are, you don't scare me, she shouted, the fire of defiance igniting within her. The figure paused, surprise shifting its dark aura. For a fleeting moment, the chaos around Sarah seemed to still. It leaned closer, and she could almost make out its features: a face that flickered in and out of existence, patchwork shadows, and glaring eyes that burned with ancient wisdom. Is that truly so? It breathed, a hint of amusement lacing its raspy tone. What if I told you that fear is merely the door to the truth? The truth you seek is bound to this very darkness. We are one. Her heart raced. Could it be that the tales her grandmother told weren't just stories? Had something essential, and indescribable, always been a part of her? An undeniable connection to the evil that plagued Willow Creek? The chapel around her shook violently, as if responding to her turmoil. You're lying! Sarah screamed, the power of her conviction ringing out like a bell in the night. At that moment, the dust-laden air thickened, solidifying into something physical. Deep, guttural growls rumbled through the ground beneath her feet, echoing her defiance. Doors around the chapel flung open one by one, revealing endless corridors of darkness beyond, yanking at her senses. Ghostly faces emerged from the void, faces of those once claimed by the shadows, their eyes wide and pleading. Those who come before you have been lost to me, Sarah. I offer a chance for redemption, the figure continued, undeterred. It gestured toward the open book, ancient text swirling in a luminous haze. This is the key to breaking the chains. She felt her breath hitch, twisting with dread and wonder. Redemption? Was this all a trap? A voiceless scream clawed at her throat as she regarded those hollow eyes in the darkness. They were crying out, yearning for liberation. Had she come here to help them, or doom them further into despair? The figure leaned closer. To read is to learn. To learn is to liberate. An electric spark of determination flared inside Sarah. She stepped forward into the book's golden light, ready to confront whatever horror awaited. The shadows howled angrily, convulsing in rejection as she groaned in effort. The words began to swirl around her, singing an eerie melody that beckoned and threatened. Suddenly, she felt it, the latent energy of the words. They were alive, ready to awaken every buried truth within her. Let it in, the figure coaxed, its voice a seductive whisper. As she plunged deeper into the book's depths, a horrifying understanding dawned on her. This wasn't just about knowledge. It was about power, about grappling with the darkness inside. And then, the air shattered once more. The surge of chaos eclipsed her every thought. In that moment of fraying reality, reality flickered as something fierce surged from the book, wrapping around Sarah like a cold embrace, pulling her towards the brink. And in the eye of that storm, Sarah realized, she was no longer just a player in this ancient game. She had become both the hunter and the hunted. The chamber echoed with her heartbeats, the last vestiges of light retreating as the darkness begged for its due. What truth would her choice unlock? What would it cost her soul? As the weight of her decision crashed over her, she whispered a desperate plea into the void, what will it take to save us all? And like a response from the abyss, a chilling silence fell awaiting her answer. The silence felt heavier than a storm cloud, pressing down on Sarah as shadows writhed around her. The weight of the book pulsed with a life of its own, whispering promises of power and peril. She could hardly breathe, each inhalation drawing in the musty scent of the chapel mingled with something sickly sweet and rotten, a reminder of the countless souls trapped in this haunting abyss. Sarah, the figure hissed, its voice now resonating through the very marrow of her bones. What you feel is the path to your awakening. The shadows hold your greatest fears but also your deepest strengths. Will you invite them in? Her heart pounded like a war drum, the rhythmic pulse matching the chaos around her. She had come seeking answers about her family's past, about the darkness that nipped at the edges of Willow Creek, not to become a vessel for it. Suddenly, the faces in the dark seemed to awaken, their eyes pleading for her to make a choice laden with consequences. Do not let fear decide for you, the figure urged, its presence shifting closer, the air crackling with energy. There is a power waiting for you, one that has been dormant for too long. Open the book and unlock what lies within. But her hands trembled, tethered by doubt. Could she handle what the book held? What if the truth fractured her mind? It was then that she felt the warmth of earlier defiance flicker within her, a fire against the cold. I can't just give in to whatever darkness you represent. She shouted, half terrified, half emboldened. There must be another way. A guttural laugh echoed around her, reverberating against the stone walls, bouncing back with an eerie, taunting lilt. You misunderstand, child. This darkness will not have you, unless you let it. You are not merely a pawn, we are attuned. Your blood calls to it, and it craves your recognition. As if on cue, the book shone brighter, casting warped silhouettes across the room, embroidering the twisted walls with grappling tendrils of shadow. She could hear the whispers rise, humming through her veins like an ancient chant. What once felt like an enigma had turned into an undeniable truth, the pull of her legacy, tugging at her heartstrings. Her resolve began to shatter, the delicate barrier of her bravery crumbling under the weight of the shadow figure's promises. They trust you, Sarah, it whispered, tantalizingly close. Will you let their shadows fade into oblivion, or will you walk with them into the light of understanding? The faces surrounding her swirled in her mind, each one a mirror reflecting her own fears. Their muted cries transformed into a haunting symphony, each note growing louder, drowning out her doubts. She was not just fighting for herself now, she was wrestling for their freedom, their redemption. What will it cost? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. What do you truly want from me? Her question hung in the air, a fragile truth beneath the tension. What I desire, the figure breathed, its voice now a sharp blade of sound, is for you to own your power. Unlock who you really are, and this war against shadows will become your greatest ally. But heed this: dare not enter without shedding the weight of your past. A cold chill crawled down her spine as she understood this offer demanded more than she was aware of. The sacrifices were not mere surface level. The echoes of every choice she had made, every sentiment she had tucked away, rang louder than the shadows. I will not be a puppet to darkness, she declared, edging closer to the glowing book, feeling the weight of her choices pile higher. With a flicker of defiance, she stretched out her hand towards the pages, heart racing, as shadows swirled violently. Would she risk everything for a chance at freedom? And in that moment, a burning question ignited within her. What if instead of breaking the chains, I became the one who forged them? As her fingertips grazed the surface of the page, the world around her contorted as time held its breath. But before she could turn back, a sudden jolt sent waves through the chamber, the ground trembling beneath her. The shadows roared, awakening something primal and ancient. As the book's energy surged, the walls trembled around her. What had she unleashed? What would it mean for her and those trapped in this cursed place? With the echoes of the past clawing at her heart, Sarah braced herself for what lay ahead, the abyss beckoning her to step further into the darkness. The chamber's tremors rattled Sarah's bones, shaking loose the remnants of her courage. Fear gripped her heart, squeezing tighter as her fingers tingled against the glowing book. The world spun around her, blurring the line between reality and some shadowy nightmare. She could feel it: the pulse of the book resonated with her, demanding her attention as if it were a heartbeat unto itself. Stay focused. She shouted at herself, but the words felt small against the brewing storm. Shadows clenched at her ankles like desperate hands reaching for her, threatening to pull her into their depths. The figure loomed closer, its face now a swirl of darkness and gleaming eyes, reflecting the chaos in her soul. You've come so far, Sarah, the figure cooed, chilling her through every syllable. Don't turn back, not now. It's time to discover who you really are. The book vibrated like a live wire, glowing with an energy that both frightened and intrigued her. Pain and promise flickered behind her eyelids, visions of her ancestors merging with the darkness and light battling for dominance. Memories woven from tragedy and triumph swirled around her like a tempest. Who was she if she opened this window to the past? What would she lose and what would she gain? A deafening roar echoed from the shadows, drowning out her thoughts. The volume pressed against her eardrums. The walls seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, synchronizing with the trapped spirits flitting between existence and oblivion. They were desperate for relief, and yet, relief might come at a terrible price. Listen to their cries. The figure hissed. They long for freedom. Only you can help them. Her resolve faltered, tears gathering in her eyes as she felt their desperation seep into her. She saw faces, blurred and broken, clawing for salvation, and silently begged her for strength. But each plea echoed in her thoughts. What about your own heart, Sarah? What will this demand of you? Would I even survive it? She whispered, half to herself, half to the specter. The figure tilted its head, a glimmer of a smirk stretching across its intangible face. Survival? Oh, dear child, it's transformation you seek. Power is a price, but the true question lies before you: how much are you willing to pay? In that moment, the shadows surged forward, encircling her, and with it came an overwhelming wave of anguish. Each shadow carried its own story, its own battles left unfought. The pain twisted in her gut like a wild animal. If she dared to venture further, what fragmented pieces of her would vanish into this eerie realm? What if she failed? What if the shadows consumed her instead? Perhaps your fear guards a hidden truth, the figure taunted softly. Uncover it. Discard what holds you back, the memories cloaked in pain, the choices born of regret. Only then will the power be yours. But could she breathe life into what was buried so long ago? Could she summon the strength to face shadows that weren't merely surrounding her but resided deep within her own heart, the book glowed brighter, intensifying in energy, a siren song coaxing her participation. Sarah swayed, the pull growing stronger, the room shimmering in a dance of dark and light. "Let go, Sarah." The figure hissed, voice dark as a midnight sky. "Embrace your legacy or let it slip away forever." With her pulse hammering in her ears, she summoned her courage again, fiercely fighting against the tide of doubt. No, she didn't know whether she was speaking to herself or the shadows. "I won't lose who I am. I will make this choice on my terms." But as the last words slipped from her lips, the walls erupted. Cracks spidered across the stone, and a howl of anguish erupted. She felt a tear in reality, a glimpse into the abyss beyond the very depth of what she might walk into, and that haunting question echoed louder than the chaos swirling around her: would embracing the darkness mean losing herself forever, or could she rise as a beacon of the light? The shadows churned, coiling tighter around her as the ground split. Beneath her, a void yawned wide, beckoning. Promising more than she could fathom. With one last shaky breath, she knew she had to choose between wielding her power or surrendering to the shadows calling her by name. And then, a whisper from within reminded her that some legacies demanded more than love. They asked for courage. What would she find on the other side of this choice? The ground roared like a wounded beast, rumbling beneath her, urging her to dive into the darkness below. The figures in the shadows clawed at her resolve, their whispers grew louder, each voice overlapping until they formed a chaotic symphony. "Sarah, help us, save us." They pleaded, drawing her closer to the precipice. Adrenaline surged through her veins as panic clawed at her throat. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she thought. But with her heart pounding, she looked into the swirling mass of shadows. They weren't just figures, they were echoes of lives once lived. Each carried burdens, unfulfilled dreams, regrets twisted into agony. For the first time, she didn't just feel their pain, she understood it. "Shouldn't you help them?" the figure urged, its voice a silken lure that crept into her mind. "You possess the key to their salvation. It's in your blood, your very essence." "Why me?" she shouted back, trying to pierce through the veil of anxiety. "Why should I carry their pain? I barely know how to handle my own." The shadows writhed in an answering tremor, dark as ink. Their energy surged, pushing against her, forcing her body to teeter at the edge. "You were meant for this, Sarah. Your ancestors fell prey to darkness, but you can rewrite their fate. You can break the cycle." With a breath held taut, she gripped the book tightly, drawing warmth from its glow. "No. I won't become a pawn, I will write my own story." As if in response, a wind howled through the chamber, sending shivers up her spine. The walls cracked further, and she felt the depths below shift, alive and waiting. Fear was a coil around her, but so was something else, a fiery resolve igniting in her chest. She was not just confronting shadows, she was confronting a legacy. "Speak your truth," the figure said, almost lovingly. "Challenge the darkness within and around you. Only then will you rise." Gripping the book tighter, Sarah closed her eyes, shutting out the miasma swirling around her. She concentrated on her ancestors' stories, those filled with both pain and triumph. She saw faces twisted in agony but saw their strength reflected in her own. She began to speak, her voice rising against the chaos. "I will not drown in fear. I am more than your whispers, I am the light born from struggle. You will not take me." As her proclamation filled the air, the shadows convulsed, distress igniting within the depths. A heart-stopping silence fell. Sarah opened her eyes, and the room brightened, fissures of light slicing through the walls like sunlight breaking dawn, but as hope bloomed, she felt the shadows lunge, desperate to claw her back into their embrace. The light flickered, a battle of darkness and illumination waging in her very soul. "Come on, stay with me," she shouted, rallying her dwindling courage against the consuming darkness. With a fierce intensity, she opened the book, its pages rippling like water as they revealed ancient symbols of power and sacrifice. "I will choose my path," she roared. The shadows recoiled, their cries morphing to howls of rage, echoing through the chamber, and then everything shattered. The book erupted into blinding light, pulsating with energy that merged with her very being. She could feel the warmth and power course through her, meld with her fears and hopes, elevating her to dizzying heights. But before she could fully understand her transformation, another surge hit. Visions swirled in the brightness, images darting by betrayals, victories shattering through reality. They didn't belong to her, yet they resonated. This wasn't just her fight, it was a collective struggle crossing generations. Then, with a sudden gasp, Sarah was thrown back into the void, the shadows falling away like grains of sand slipping through her fingers. Now suspended between two worlds, she felt the weight of every soul that had cried out for freedom, both theirs and her own. The echoes of fear now mingled with strength. But as the light tethered to her soul dimmed, something sinister remained. A dark presence lingered, unbroken, whispering sweet taunts she could barely comprehend. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. What if she had unleashed something beyond her control? What lay ahead as she bridged the gap between light and dark, and as reality folded around her, she questioned whether true victory lay not only in power but in the acceptance of her own shadows, and the choices she made next. The silence was shattered by a pulse of energy that surged through the air, filling the void with an intensity that rattled her bones. Sarah gasped, feeling her body suspended in a liminal space between light and shadow. The remnants of the spectral world flickered around her, a kaleidoscope of tortured faces and whispered fears. What did I unleash? She thought, dread pooling in her stomach. She clenched her fists, the book still warm against her skin, its glow fading into an ominous hum. A chill swept through her, brushing against her spine like the breath of a ghost. It wasn't just chaos that loomed, it was a promise of deeper torments to come. Choose wisely, Sarah, a voice drifted through the wavering reality. It was that same alluring figure, its face shifting between those of her ancestors, their expressions twisted with longing and despair. This is your moment. Do you dare step forward or retreat into your fears? Tension crackled around her like static electricity. Fear prickled at her mind, threatening to pull her back into trepidation, but also pushing her forward. Her own heart echoed with ancient rhythms, courage blooming amidst despair. I will not run, she shouted defiantly, and the shadows wrenched in response, a sigh of frustration echoing in the depths. The mist thickened, swirling faster around her, but Sarah's focus sharpened like a blade. She recalled how each ancestor had fought their own battles, their sacrifices weaved into the very fabric of her being. She raised the book, entreating its pages to reveal their secrets. Show me the way. Suddenly, runes began to light one by one, illuminating details that sliced through the fog. Each symbol danced with power, resonating deep within her. She saw a flash of a stone arch, long forgotten, a gateway between realms, a way to confront what she had let slip into her world. The arch, I can control it. The shadows stirred violently, anger turning them into frenzied tempests, clawing at her consciousness. A cacophony rose, voices melded together, each more desperate than the last. You don't know what you're awakening, they hissed. This power isn't just yours. It's ours. Sweat trickled down her back, as realization crashed over her like a wave. This wasn't merely a battle for herself. This was a war of wills, each seeking to control the forces ejecting from the shadow's grip. No. She exclaimed, her breath ragged. This ends now. She centered herself, feeling the chaos swirl around her, pulsating with adrenaline. With each shared spirit and energy, she carved her way to forge a new path, one drawn not from the past, but from her own fierce heart. Accept the darkness, but do not be consumed by it. She thrust the book forward, pressing her will against the need for control entwined with vulnerability. Her voice rang with authority, echoing through the dim world. Light began to weave through the darkness, blossoming, illuminating a once hidden path behind the churning shadows. The tide shifted. The figure's visage changed, morphing into a wretched face that screamed in horror. You cannot break this cycle. It shrieked, as the thick fog began to shatter, revealing glimpses of a place beyond, raw and untouched. Waves of energy swirled, the boundaries of her spirit and the world outside began to merge. The arch, illuminated now, beckoned to her in an unearthly glow. But just as she took the first step towards it, a violent echo thundered through the realm, rupturing the air with malevolence. "You'll regret this, Sarah. This is just the taste of what is to come." Shivers ran down her spine as shadows twisted into new forms, lurking with purpose she couldn't yet understand. Fear gripped her heart, twisting it painfully as the darkness rallied, coiling ever closer. In that moment, she understood she wasn't merely fighting for herself anymore. She was forging a new narrative, not just for her line, but perhaps for every lost soul who had ever wandered into shadows. With resolve steeled, she reached for the arch, determined to step into the unknown. What awaited her on the other side? And could she truly rewrite the fate of countless shadows threatening to engulf her soul? The moment Sarah crossed the threshold of the arch, a blast of cold wind enveloped her. It was as if she'd plunged into ice water. Her senses dulled and heightened all at once. Sounds twisted into unrecognizable echoes, like whispers from a world just beyond the veil of reality. She felt as if the walls of existence were constricting around her, squeezing tighter until she gasped for air. Facing a swirling maelstrom of light and color, Sarah stumbled forward. The world around her vibrated, revealing a landscape that shouldn't exist. Trees with twisting branches reached for a sky painted in impossible hues, shadows flitted between them, and an ominous hum draped itself over everything. "Welcome," a ghostly voice called, softer than a breeze yet loud enough to rip through the chaotic soundscape. Before her stood figures, shimmering apparitions of her ancestors, but now stripped of the despair she had once seen. They wore expressions of serenity, their features framed in an ethereal glow. "Why did you bring me here?" Sarah demanded, though part of her felt the answer slithering just out of reach. "What do you want?" The wisps of light wove closer, coalescing into a single figure. It was the woman from her nightmares, the shifting visage taking form consistently for the first time. "You are the key," she said, her voice low and rich, like dark chocolate flowing over rough terrain. "The arch shows where you belong, where the fight must be fought." Confusion churned in Sarah's gut. "Fight? What are you talking about? I thought I could end this, break the cycle." The woman shook her head, sorrow deepening her already haunting gaze. "There is no breaking. Only understanding." She gestured to the landscape around them, where shadows twisted into grotesque shapes before fading into nothingness. "What you see here, it is a reflection. The darkness you face is born out of every fear, every regret, passed through generations. It will not vanish without confrontation." The realization hit Sarah like a punch in the gut. "You mean I have to confront all of it? The pain, the sadness?" "Yes. Only by facing the specters can you transform them." The woman's words resonated inside Sarah. What she had unleashed was not just chaos but a deeper, unhealed wound carried forth by her lineage, an inheritance she had never wanted. "Why didn't you warn me?" she yelled, anger mixing with despair. "Because you needed to choose this path yourself," the woman replied, her tone gentle yet firm. "Your ancestors walked it, and now it is your turn. Their power, their stories, they dwell within you. Embrace it, and it shall guide you." With those words, the shadows surged again, but this time with purpose. Tendrils of darkness snaked forward, reaching for her, tugging on her very soul. Sarah could feel them crawling over her skin, pinching, gnawing. Panic surged. Was she losing herself to this darkness? But, amidst the dread, she felt something else, a warmth rising in her chest, memories soaring to the forefront of her mind. Faces of those who had come before, their pain and sacrifice bubbling to the surface. "No more!" she cried out, her voice determined as she thrust her hand forward. Light exploded from within her, filling the space with blinding brilliance. The shadows screamed, retreating into the folds of darkened corners. As the light unfurled, it revealed what lay beyond the veil, a vivid tapestry of her family's history woven with threads of triumph and heartache. Sarah pressed forward, feeling the pull of her ancestors rallying beside her. I will not be consumed by this. I reclaim the power. But as she stepped deeper into the light, a haunting laugh echoed, the same shriek from before. You think you've won? This is only the beginning, Sarah. Every triumph will come with an equal shadow. The air crackled with tension, and in an instant, she was plunged back into darkness, the luminous world she had touched dissolving like smoke. The arch stood behind her, flickering uncertainly, a reminder of the battle she had ignited. Heart racing, Sarah realized the true challenge lay ahead. The darkness was an ever-present adversary, but as long as she remembered the light within, she might just stand a chance. What other powers lay in wait, hidden in the shadows? And would she have the strength to confront them all? The darkness closed in around Sarah, suffocating and relentless. She stumbled back from the arch, her heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The air felt heavier, oppressive, and she could barely breathe as echoes of the haunting laughter ricocheted through her mind. Every triumph will come with an equal shadow. The words clung to her, whispering warnings she couldn't shake. Was it true? Had she unleashed something impossibly powerful? Doubt seeped into her resolve, gnawing at the edges of her courage. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. Her ancestors' glowing forms had faded, leaving her isolated in a twisted landscape that was now all too familiar. The trees loomed, branches grasping like skeletal fingers, hiding unknown horrors in their depths. Shadows twirled ominously, waiting for a moment of weakness. Focus, she murmured, shaking her head to clear it. There was light. I felt it, and I can do it again. With that thought, she forced herself to the ground, palms pressed firmly against the grass. It felt warm, pulsing beneath her touch, like it was alive. She closed her eyes, reaching deep within, searching for the spark she had found before. The moment she dug into her own memories, bursting forth were the faces of those who had come before, grandparents, long lost, and even those she had never met. Their stories flooded her mind, a torrent of emotions washing over her. Pain, resilience, love. All the strength of her lineage surging through her. Together she whispered. I can do this with you. As she opened her eyes, a soft glow emanated from her hands. The warmth spread through the darkness, illuminating the twisted branches and shadows that eyed her. For a moment, she could see their faces distorted, angry, twisted in rage and despair. She was terrified, but something deeper than fear began to stir within her, a fierce determination. Come out! She shouted, her voice cracking with the weight of her courage. I'm not afraid of you. I will face you. And just like that, the shadows recoiled, writhing in distress. She felt their confusion, their venomous discontent, erupting against her newfound strength. But Sarah wasn't backing down. She thrust her hands forward, the light bursting brighter, driven by the ancestors' love and pain transforming into hope. The air crackled again, this time with a brilliance that felt electric. Shadows screamed, not just with fury, but with something akin to terror. The once formidable darkness began to unravel, retreating under the power of her light. Yet, as the grappling darkness receded, she caught glimpses of what lay in the depths behind it, wretched forms of lost spirits trapped in anguish. Their eyes flickered with a pleading sadness that pierced her heart. Help us! They whispered in harmony, laced with despair. Sarah recoiled. Their suffering reached deep into her, mingling with her own struggles, and an unforeseen weight buckled her knees. She trembled, not from fear, but from empathy that bloomed within her as their whispers turned into an exquisite melody of pain and sorrow. Who are you? She asked, her throat thick with emotion. What do you want? The shadows paused, and in that pregnant silence, she felt them reconvene. Slowly, faces emerged from the swirling darkness, lost relatives, each hauntingly familiar, their existence intertwined with her own. And what has begun? One spirit urged, voice fluttering like the wings of a trapped moth. Only you can free us. A chill slithered down her spine. Free them? But how? Questions surged like tidal waves, crashing over her. Could she really face down the darkness not just for herself, but for those trapped within it? What sacrifices might be required? The arch flickered behind her, glowing faintly, a doorway to the fight she had only just begun. She seemed to hear the echoes of her ancestors, united in their struggles, guiding her. Join me, Sarah resolved. Together, we can break this curse. But just as her resolve hardened, a thunderous roar erupted around her, reverberating through the ground and setting the air thick with terror. What had she awakened? In the distance, shapes began moving, menacing shadows coalescing into a mass. Their forms rippled, vast and towering, overshadowing Sarah's newfound light. She felt the weight of the challenge pressing down on her chest, a lump forming in her throat. Stand strong, Sarah, she muttered, every fiber of her being screaming in defiance. But as the monstrous shadows loomed closer, closing in around her with eyes ablaze, she was left questioning everything. Would she be able to wield the light in the face of such darkness? The weight of the unknown lay heavily upon her, and a question burned in the air as the shapes advanced: what would be the price of liberation? The shadows loomed over Sarah, swirling with menace as monstrous forms writhed and twisted, pushing against the fragile light she had conjured. Heart racing, her breaths coming in ragged gasps, she felt the urge to retreat. But the call of her ancestors surged within her, igniting a blaze of determination deep in her chest. I will not bow to fear, she declared, forcing herself to stand tall despite the encroaching darkness, pulsing with energy. The light that had once flickered confidently now shimmered, intensity wavering. But Sarah knew she had to believe. With a fierce battle cry, she lifted her hands toward the towering shadows, channeling every ounce of power and love from her lineage into a single moment. You will not take me. She pushed against the shadows, feeling resistance ebb and flow as light met darkness in a glorious clash. Foolish girl. One of the shadows roared, its voice like thunder echoing from forgotten caves. You can never escape your legacy. As the shadows advanced, Sarah made a choice. She embraced her ancestry not as chains binding her to despair but as a legacy anchoring her to strength. I'm learning from it. I won't run from those who came before me, she shouted, her voice vibrant, bursting through the tension of dread. Facing the encroaching darkness, she focused harder, feeling her ancestors stepping forward with her, a legion of souls ready to battle. She realized the key wasn't merely facing the shadows but understanding them. Each face before her bore stories a mix of pain and pride. I will not let your darkness control my fate, she declared, unwavering. Suddenly, the shadows retreated, recoiling as bursts of light pierced through the veils, falling away from their forms. Sarah dug deeper, drawing their stories into herself. Heart pounding, she unleashed a wave of desire, a deep yearning to understand each of them, not with fear, but with compassion. I liberate you, she cried, the power surging wildly, and through that compassion, everything exploded within her. The screams of lost souls transformed into cries of hope. Each whisper of despair turned actualized dreams as the shadows' terrifying faces shifted from anger to astonishment. They became light, fraying into shimmering specters, releasing the anguish that had tethered them to darkness for far too long. In that instant, clarity flooded over Sarah. The shadows once held dominion over Willow Creek, feeding off fear, thriving in pain. But she had become a bridge. Not just a vessel, but a choice. Feel love instead of fear, she urged to them, the plead dancing on the winds. The shadows flickered, hesitating for the first time, dimming under the power of unity. Sabine emerged, the luminous figure of her ancestors standing gleaming beside her, merging into a force unlike any other. Sarah stepped further into the light, pointing toward the arch that had once seemed so helpless. You'll find peace in forgiveness, even for yourselves. With those words, the shadows surrendered, swirling into a radiant embrace. Light expanded, engulfing everything, wrapping around the town of Willow Creek, lifting the weight of generations entangled in sorrow. The chapel transformed. No longer a haunted space of despair, it gleamed with warmth and bright potential. The townsfolk, having felt the shadows lift, gathered from their homes, emerging into the light, eyes wide with hope, witnessing their beloved chapel rejuvenated, and with that, Sarah felt a calm wash over her. She found herself standing at the forefront, enveloped in warmth as the tendrils of darkness evaporated into nothingness. "We did it," she whispered, heart swelling with the love of those who stood beside her. The fear that had once paralyzed her washed away. "You are my legacy," a soft voice echoed through her, the presence of her ancestors weaving around her like a protective cloak. The fear of darkness could not extinguish the light within. In the vibrant aftermath of the liberation, she turned to see the faces of the townsfolk filled with gratitude and newfound faith. Sarah understood, their journey would continue, but they weren't walking it alone anymore. Together, they had rewritten a story heavy with sorrow into one blooming with hope. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over Willow Creek, Sarah felt it. A sense of completion, yet the call of the future lingered. She had confronted the deepest fears and emerged stronger, ready for whatever stood ahead. A pulse of energy thrummed through her as she declared with confidence, "This is only the beginning." The shadows had retreated, but she would be vigilant. Willow Creek had been reborn, and she was its guardian, a beacon that in understanding and embracing the past, they can transform the future. So what does this mean for you? This story doesn't end here. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive adventures coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and help others discover this thrilling journey. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about what happens next in Willow Creek, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters, and only true fans understand the importance of backing this channel. Let's keep the story alive.